today? I hope you are doing great. Today we are going to have another learning opportunity. I am again your English teacher, Mrs. Edna J. Vigilia. Today class, I will be presenting to you our lesson 7 for the 4th quarter. Our topic for today has something to do with NLC Code English 10 11B-29 and our topic, observe correct grammar in making definitions. So definitely at the end of the discussion or of this lesson, you are expected to first identify the parts of definition and grammatical structures connected in making definitions. Second, you are also expected to revise definitions which contain grammatical error or errors. Next, you are also expected to construct definition of terms using key points and correct grammar structure. And lastly, you are expected to value the importance of using correct grammar in making definitions. Okay, before I will be presenting to you the lesson for today, let me first check your prior knowledge. So we will have the first activity. Okay, for the direction of this activity, all you have to do, class, is to write C if you think the idea which is being presented is correct, and write W if you think the idea is not correct. So we have 4 items for this activity. For the first one, number 1, it is important to define words correctly. So do you think this idea is correct or wrong? Number 2, in defining words, it is a must to observe correct pattern or structure. For number 3, in defining words, no need to observe correct grammar. And lastly, for number 4, in defining words formally, personal views or opinions are accepted. Okay, you have 4 or 2 minutes to answer the first activity. Let us see now if you were able to answer the activity 1 or the first activity correctly. Don't worry, this is just a matter of checking your prior knowledge. Nothing to worry with regards to your scores or the score that you will be getting. Okay, for number 1. Okay, the answer there is... Anyone from the class? Okay, very good. The answer is letter C. It is correct that it is important to define words correctly. Okay, how about for the next item? For number 2, any volunteer? Okay, that is also correct. Very good for the correct answer. It is true, class, that in defining words, it is really a must to observe correct pattern or structure. How about for number 3? Any volunteer from the class? Okay, thank you. Thank you for the correct answer. That is wrong, definitely. In defining words, we really need to observe correct grammar. So number 4 is wrong, sorry. Okay, so for the last item, no, sorry, it's not for number 4, number 3 I mean. So let's move now for number 4. What do you think is the answer? Anyone? Okay, thank you for volunteering yourself. Yes, you are correct. That's also wrong. When we define or give a formal definition of words, personal views or opinions or our opinions are not accepted. Thank you very much for those who were able to respond well or correctly to activity 1. Okay, it's time for us now to move to activity 2, class. But before I will give you activity 2, let me first remind you, class, that if ever you have any difficulties in dealing with some terms in sentences or in sentences that I will be presenting on you, or if you don't have dictionary or access online, kindly seek help or assistance from your parents or guardian for you to at least cope with the activity. Okay, so I hope you are still listening. Okay, now let's move to activity 2. For the directions, activity 2, all you have to do, class, is to draw or send me a happy face if you think the definition is grammatically correct. If not, draw, a sad face. Okay, let's start with number 1. For number 1, let me read. Protein is a complex compound composed of amino acid. Okay, kindly tell me if it is for you a sad face, for wrong, grammatically wrong, or a happy face for having a correct grammar. Okay, so for number 2, let me read. Depression is a common and serious medical illness for negatively is affect how you feel. Okay, again, class, all you have to do is to send or write or draw, a happy face if you think the definition given is grammatically correct, and a sad face if it is not. So again, for number 2, you can see there underlined phrase or words which will guide you or which will tell you or which will serve as your basis in identifying whether it's grammatically correct or ungrammatical. Okay, let's move on now to item or number 3. Okay, for number 3, genetics is a branch of biology concerned with the study of genes, genetic variation, and heredity in organism. In organism. Okay guys, time is up. It's time for us now to know if you were able to identify if the definition is grammatically correct or ungrammatical. So I will be presenting you the answer. All you have to do is just check your own work with all your honesty. Okay, for number 1, the answer is, of course, a happy face. Okay, meaning it is grammatically correct. The definition is grammatically correct. For number 2, okay, so for number 2, a sad face. So meaning the definition given is ungrammatical. Okay, there we have the correct answer. Okay, let's have now number 3. Okay, so for number 3, it's also a sad face. It's also ungrammatical. So for the correct answer for number 3, there you have. Except instead of the word concern, you will see there the word concern, or it could be concerning. Okay, thank you. So I hope, again, most of you were able to respond well to activity 2. So I want you now to move to the next activity. This time, let me present to you activity 3. So in activity 3, I want you to recall how to write sentences or a sentence with correct subject-verb agreement. So I hope you still remember your previous lesson or your past lesson about subject-verb agreement. Okay, when we say again subject, we are referring to the doer or the topic, or the doer of the action. And when you say verb, it could be an action word or a state of being which tells about the subject. Okay, so for the directions in this activity, I want you to complete the following sentences with a singular or a plural form of verb in each parenthesis. Okay, so again, you'll be seeing a guide in a parenthesis in each sentence. All you have to do is to provide or to write the correct form of the verb, which will agree to the subject-verb agreement, as of course, as you've learned in your previous lesson. So we have 3 items for this activity. So for number 1, the verb or the guide inside the parenthesis is the word amazed. So the sentence goes this one. His determination to survive from COVID-19 virus blank me. So what do you think is the correct form of the verb that you can write here? So you have here the guide, which is a verb amazed. For number 2, the verb inside the parenthesis is the word help. So the sentence is, my close friend blank needs to put up a community pantry. So what do you think is the form of the verb? What will you do with the word help? Next, item number 3, the last item for activity 3. So what you need here is a be verb. Okay, number 3, most people nowadays blank suffering from anxiety. So you will have 1 to 2 minutes to do this activity. Thank you, class, for still cooperating with me in activity 3. It's time for us now to check or to know the correct answers. So there we have the correct answers. So for number 1, there you can see the word amaze. The correct answer for that, or the correct form to use, is the word amazes. So it's in a singular form, present tense. Next is for number 2, the word help. There we have for number 2, the correct form is the word helps. Helps here, as you can see, are based from what you've learned in your previous lessons, of course, about subject-verb agreement. Helps is in a singular form, present tense as well. And last but not the least, for number 3, the be verb there that is needed to complete the idea or the sentence is a be verb, which is are. So we knew that are is a plural form, or is in a plural form, and is in a present tense as well. Okay, there you have now the answers. I hope most of you were able to come up with these answers as well. Thank you. This time, class, I will be presenting to you another activity, and that is activity number 4. In this activity, I want you to check out the grammar memes below, or which is presented on you. All you have to do then is, or next is, try to correct the errors in each meme, then answer the succeeding questions. This is a 2-minute activity. Let's start. Okay, the first one. Next. Another one. Okay, by the way, class, as you noticed, in each meme, you can see there some links. Okay, I presented it there to show you that those memes are taken from other source or online sources, to be specific. If you want to see or know more about those memes connected to grammar, you can also do a research. Just don't forget what we've studied or what we've internalized about plagiarism. Don't forget, of course, to cite your sources, especially if you are, of course, trying to get informations that are really needed to be cited. Don't forget the 6 ways to avoid plagiarism. Okay, so let's move on now to the questions in relation to our memes. For question number 1, let me read the questions for number 1. Class, were you able to get the message of each meme immediately? So as you see each meme, you think you were able to understand it immediately? Or you were able to understand it well? Why? Any answer from the class? Okay, thank you. So, thank you for being honest. So obviously, most of you weren't able to understand or internalize the message of each meme presented. For what reason? Yes, as your classmates have, or your classmates have said, it's because the memes have errors, or the memes are grammatically not correct, or they are ungrammatical. For the second question, did grammar mistakes affect the meaning of the statements? Why? Or try to explain. Anyone from the class? Again, do you think grammar mistakes affect the meaning of the statements? Kindly support your answer. Any volunteer? Okay, thank you. So obviously, grammar mistakes affect the meaning of the statements. And thank you for the reason. So we knew already that every time there is a change, even just in a punctuation mark like a comma, automatically the meaning of the word also change, or there is automatically a change in terms of meaning. So definitely grammar mistakes will affect the statements. For number 3, is grammar important in the meaning of sentences? Any answer from the class? Other volunteer, please. I am encouraging everyone to participate as well. So is grammar important in meaning of sentences? Okay, thank you. Thank you for the answer given. Okay, yes, that's true. I agree that grammar is very important if we are talking about the meaning of sentences. That is why we are studying a lot of rules that is under grammar usage, because they directly affect the meaning of any sentence. That's true. Thank you for the wonderful answer. Last but not the least, do you think class committing mistakes in defining words must be avoided also? So if you will be asked to define a word, do you think it is necessary to avoid committing mistakes? Do you think? Any answer? Okay, thank you for that wonderful answer. Definitely, we must avoid committing mistakes if we are going to define a certain word. For what reason? Definitely, we are for understanding the message. If we opt to understand the message or to give a clear message, we need to avoid committing mistakes, because grammar or ungrammatical will definitely affect the message or the meaning of the sentence. So we need to avoid it. Okay, so to check if what are the correct term or how to present it correctly, let me present to you the correct answer for each meme. For number 1, there you can see the answer. So we have the correct answer. Instead of arrived, we have the past tense of the word arrive, which is arrived. Arrived. Okay, that's the correct answer. I hope you get it correctly. For number 2, we have 2 words there that are misspelled, or there is one word there, the word there. In the given, the there is a pronoun, but what is needed there is the demonstrative, not the pronoun. That is why we say it's wrong. So instead of THEIR, what is needed there is the THERE. As well as the word wasn't. Wasn't there is wrong or ungrammatical because of the absence of an apostrophe. An apostrophe there, as you can see, though it's just an apostrophe, it really or badly affects the meaning of the sentence or the meme. For number 3, these are the possible answers. So here you can see a lot of apostrophes a while ago in the meme given. But as you can see with the possible answers, the apostrophe there are not really correct because there's no need for apostrophe because apostrophes there indicates possession. And in this sentences or in that particular meme or in this meme, there's no such ownership which must be expressed. It's just a matter of plural forms. Like items, it's a plural, not to signify ownership. Like payments as well, as there signifies plural form and not ownership. Okay, so these are possible answers for that meme, the last meme. Thank you. I hope most of you were able to come up with these possible answers. Okay, so this time, let me present to you the important things that you need to remember. The first one, let's talk about definition. So definitions in academic writing should be grammatically accurate. So when you say academic writing, meaning formal writings. So if you are going to have your formal writings, or what shall we call it, academic writings, we must be particular in terms of grammar. So our grammar there must be accurate, especially if we are defining or explaining certain things or words. So in defining words, it is really essential to avoid misunderstanding with your readers. So defining words is also essential. So we are talking about definition now because as I've said a while ago, defining terms is very essential. Okay, so another one to point out under definition, a formal definition usually consists of 3 parts. So take note, again, formal definition usually consists of 3 parts. So what are these parts? First one, the term. Okay, when you say the term, that's the word or a phrase itself that you will be defining, or which could be a word or a phrase to be defined. Second, the class or the concept to which the term belongs. Again, second is the class or the concept to which the term belongs. And the third one, or the last one, the differentiating characteristics that distinguish it from the rest of its class. Again, the third one, the differentiating characteristics that distinguish it from the rest of the class or of its class. So to make it clear again, I want to reiterate in defining terms, especially formal terms, or in defining or in having a formal definition, let's not forget that definition has three parts. The first one is the term or the word to be defined, and the second one is the class or the classification or where that word belongs in general, and the third one is the differentiating characteristics or the remaining parts of the definition. So as for the example, we can see, I want to present you this example. So we have here, let me read. Astronomy is a branch of scientific study primarily concerned with celestial objects inside and outside of the Earth's atmosphere. Again, astronomy is a branch of scientific study primarily concerned with celestial objects inside and outside of the Earth's atmosphere. So as you can see, I labeled it that astronomy here, as you can see, is labeled as the term or the word that is being defined. Another, I underlined branch of scientific study. Branch of scientific study is labeled as the class. And the next one, from the word concerned up to the last word, I labeled it under differentiating characteristics. So it's very clear that in defining a term, we have to define it with three parts or in three parts: the term, the class, and the differentiating characteristics. Another example, chemistry is a science that deals with the study of the composition and properties of substance. So there you can see the word chemistry is labeled as the term. That's for part 1. Next is the word science, labeled as the class, as part 2 of the definition. And from the word that, after the last word, is labeled differentiating characteristics, as for the third part or the last part. So it's very clear that in defining or in having a formal definition, we must define a term with three parts: the term, the class, and the third one, differentiating characteristics. Another one to take note or that you must bear in mind is an important skill to develop in order to make grammatically correct definition is the use of relative pronouns as well as participial and prepositional phrases in stating the distinguishing characteristic of the term defined. Okay, to make it simple, isn't it we have the definition or a defining term, we need to define it with three parts. The first one is the term, the second one is the class, and the third one is distinguishing characteristic of the term defined. So for you to easily identify or label which of the definition belongs or is under distinguishing characteristics of the term defined, you need to take note of, first, relative pronouns, second one, participial and prepositional phrases as for the third one. So again, relative pronouns, second, participial phrase, third one, prepositional phrases. So these three things you must be considering because these are the things or terms which will help you identify what particular is distinguishing characteristics of the term defined. So it gives or it introduces or these things introduce that part, the distinguishing characteristics of the term defined. Okay, so as I've said, relative pronouns are of course, are the words specifically will tell you that you are already in a third part of the definition. So take note, what are the example of relative pronouns? There you have the that, the which, who, when, where, whom, whose, wherein, whereby, and many more. Likewise, for the participle, we have the present participle. I hope you remember this still. And the past participle. So for the present participle, always remember, present participle, these are the verbs ending in ing. And for the past participle, these are the verbs that ends in d or ed. So if you will see relative pronouns or participial phrases or past participle, either it is a present participle or a past participle, then that will serve us already as your guide that the definition part is already in the third part. And of course, don't forget prepositional phrases as well. So for your prepositional phrases, these are some of the examples of preposition. So we have common prepositions here as for the example. So we have to, for, in, from, on, at, and many more. So I am really expecting that no need for me to go deeper with relative pronouns example, as well as the participles where it is in present participle or a past participle, or even prepositions, because you're already grade 10. So you're expected already to know a lot of examples for each. So to show you how to label the three parts concerning relative pronouns, participial phrase or prepositional phrase, I have here examples. So the first one, example for relative clause. So as you can see in this example, chemistry again is a science that deals with the study of the composition and properties of substance. So it is very obvious that the word that here is an example of relative pronoun. So it's in color pink, and there you see the arrow. I labeled this, and this is labeled as the relative pronoun. So from that word, which is that, down to the last sentence, this part is already considered under differentiating characteristics. And from the word that up to the last word, we call it relative clause. So again, we call this part a relative clause, which is already under differentiating characteristics in terms of parts of definition. Another example, protein is a micronutrient for building muscle mass. Okay, obviously I labeled the word for as preposition. So I hope you still remember that for is a preposition. So from the word for, which is a preposition, up to the last word, we call it prepositional phrase. So this prepositional phrase itself is already identified, or we already considered it under differentiating characteristics. Obviously, it is being introduced by the word for, or the preposition for. Last but not the least is the participle. So this time we have here the example, Astronomy is a branch of scientific study primarily concerned with celestial objects inside and outside of the Earth's atmosphere. So, obviously here, very clear that the word concerned is being labeled as the past participle. So I said we have the present participle and past participle. In this example, concerned is a past participle. And from this word up to the last word, we call it a participial phrase, which is also under the part of the definition distinguishing characteristics of the term defined. So, that's very obvious. So I hope you learned something about the three parts of the definition. I hope too that you will still be remembering the help of the relative pronouns, the participles, and the preposition in identifying the last part of the definition, which is distinguishing characteristics of the word being defined. Okay, this time I want to add more. Of course, this time I want to present to you additional tips for writing definitions, since we are really in need to know or to develop the skill in defining words correctly. So for the first one, avoid defining with X is when and X is where statements. These introductory adverb phrases should be avoided. So, meaning class, you need to really stick to the how to define a word. A while ago, we've said in defining formally, we need to consider the three parts. So meaning there's no need for us to add other terms that are not needed. So we need to stick to the definition or the term, next with a class, and the third one is for the distinguishing characteristics. So no need for you to add other words that are not necessary. So we need to go directly. So again, so as you can see in the presentation, the first one is said to be avoided, and the second one is the revised one. So in the second one, the revised one, it follows what we've studied a while ago. Okay, so what is being presented, or the proper way of defining the term. Next, another tip is that define a noun with a noun, a verb with a verb, and so forth. So in the definition, definitely a certain word could have a definition under a noun, or it could also be a verb. So meaning we must be knowledgeable about it. If the term is asking for a definition of a noun, then go for a noun. But if a term is a verb, we need also to stick to the definition, which is a verb. Okay, so there you have an example. A smartphone, which is a noun, is a mobile device that combines cellular and mobile computing functions into one unit. So we knew that a smartphone is a noun. So do not ever give a definition that has something to do with describing it, which is an adjective, or by simply giving an action word or the usage of it. Since a smartphone is a noun, so you need to define it, which is, of course, a definition for a noun. So that's it. Next, number 3. Do not define a word by mere repetition or merely restating the word. This is called circular definition, wherein a word is defined by using another in its definition. So again, do not simply define a word by simply repeating or restating the word. For example, rhyming poetry consists of lines that contain end rhymes. So you simply repeat the word rhyme or rhyming. Rhyming, rhymes, they're just almost the same. So you simply repeat it. So it is said that do not do it. So you really need to define it, as you are not merely restating the word or just repeating the word that you are defining. So there you can see the revised one. Rhyming poetry consists of lines that contain two or more words with similar sounding, of course, sounding final syllables. Next, for number 4, define a word using simple terms, words, or familiar context. Meaning, if you are going to define a word, do not define it using other words that needs also to be defined. Meaning, simply use words that are common or words that are, of course, easy for a reader to understand. That no need for them to have another or to get a dictionary or to look for the meaning of it, because it is a waste of time or it's just a matter of misleading the readers. So last but not the least, for the tips, avoid adding personal details to definitions, especially if you are asked to give formal definition. So we are not entitled to give our personal or our opinion or personal views in terms of defining a word. Okay, that's all for the tips for writing definitions. Okay, class, thank you for listening. I hope you learned or you get something from the tips that I presented on you on how to effectively write a good definition. Okay, so this time I want you to do activity 5 for me to know if you learned something from what I've discussed a while ago. So this is a 2-minute activity. All you have to do for activity 5 is simply copy and label the definitions below. Please refer to previous samples as your reference in labeling the definition. So for the first one, we have here, Internet is a global computer network that connects users with service networks such as the World Wide Web. Number 2, a printer is a computer hardware which is used to produce printed output. Number 3, a computer is an electronic system designed to manipulate and store data. Okay, as I've said, it is a 2-minute activity. So I will give you 2 minutes to copy and label the said definitions. Time is up, class. I hope you did not find a lot of difficulties in doing this activity. So it's time for me now to show you or to present to you the correct answers in this activity. Again, I am encouraging every one of you to check your own work. And please check it with all your honesty. Okay, for the answer for number 1, there we go. Okay, check your own work. So as you can see there, internet is the term, is labeled as a term. Computer is labeled as the class. And from the word that, which is relative pronoun, up to the last one is labeled as the distinguishing characteristics. That's all for number 1. Let's move to number 2. There we have the correct answer. A printer is a computer hardware which is used to produce printed output. So a printer is labeled as the term or the word to be defined. Computer hardware is the class. And from the relative pronoun, which is which, up to the last word, which is output, is labeled as distinguishing characteristics. I hope most of you were able also to get it right. Number 3, a computer is an electronic system designed to manipulate and store data. So in this item, a computer is labeled as a term, and electronic system is the class, and designed as the past participle up to the last data is labeled as the distinguishing characteristics. So congratulations! I can feel really that most of you were able to do activity 5 well, or you were able to respond to the activity or activity 4 well. Okay, so we're not done yet with the activity, or in activity 5 I mean, letter A. Let's move now to activity 5 still, but letter B. So this is another activity which will gauge how far you've learned from our discussion. So in this activity, all you have to do, class, is just revise the following definitions by utilizing the key pointers in writing a good definition. Again, the skill here is you are tasked to revise the definitions of the terms by utilizing the key pointers in writing good definition. Be sure to consider the 3 parts of the definition, class, and it must be free from any grammatical error. So this activity is a 3-minute activity. So the first word to be defined is circular definition. Second is synchronous learning. 3 is asynchronous learning. So again, there is already a definition for each term. All you have to do is simply revise the definition for each that is given. Don't forget the key points and the need for a grammar or the correct grammar. thank you. I can feel that you did not find any difficulties because a lot from you were able to do or to finish the task ahead of time. So this time I have 3 questions that I want you to answer. So out of the given activities and after the discussion, what is the most common or typical pattern in writing definitions that you've learned, class? Again, for question 1, I want you to answer this. I want you to write it on a piece of paper, or you can also give your answer orally, or you can simply type it. What is the most common or typical pattern in writing definitions? Okay, thank you. So, thank you for your classmates who volunteered to answer. Okay, yes, that's true. One, of course, is the parts of the definition. It has 3 parts. And of course, you need to remember that the last part is being introduced either by a relative pronoun or a participial or a participle, whether it a present participle or a past participle, and of course, a preposition. Okay. Next, how will you help yourself in defining words correctly? If you will be asked or tasked to define words, how will you help yourself to give a good definition or an accurate definition? Any volunteer from the class? How will you help yourself? Okay, thank you. Yes, your answers are correct. Definitely, you will provide yourself an application if you are using a cell phone, or simply prepare with you a dictionary. And last answer from your classmate is consider, of course, the tips or the key points in defining a term. That's correct. Congratulations and very good to those who responded. Last, why is correct grammar important in writing and making definitions? Again, why is correct grammar important in writing and in making definitions? So this question is quite hard to answer if you did not listen to our discussion. But if you listened, well, this one is not really that hard to answer. Anyone from the class? Volunteer? Okay, thank you so much. Yes, one of your classmates answered that it is really correct or important. It's very important to have a correct grammar if you are making definitions or if you are defining a certain term, because each mistake in grammar can definitely affect the meaning of that term, which eventually will also mislead or will lead to misunderstanding, especially on the part of the readers. Okay, thank you for responding to our questions. I hope you learned a lot by listening and of course by doing our activity. So it's time now for you to have your final activity under assessment. This time, you will not be seeing an answer after doing this activity. Why? Because it's already an assessment part. In this activity or in assessment, you need to help yourself to do this activity well, because this activity will be recorded under our formative assessment. So for the direction, of course, directions, write your own definitions of the following words. Include articles such as the, a, or an where necessary. Don't forget to observe the key pointers discussed and correct grammar. So this is now the totality of your learnings. This will help me identify or gauge if you are able to learn, or I still need to give you an enrichment activity or intervention activity. So the score of yours will lead me or will give me a hint on what will be my next move. Of course, definitely with regards to your status in this lesson. So we have here 5 words which you need to define based on how you understand our lesson. So we have galaxy, number 1. Number 2, atmosphere. Number 3, universe. Number 4, planet. And the last one is astronomy. Okay, class, this one is a 3 to 5 minute activity. Don't forget, class, that there is a rubric for you to consider. So we need a rubric for you to be guided. Of course, for you also to gain good points. So all in all, this is 30 points. Okay, so number 1 for our rubric. For 10 points, definition of words is free from errors in grammar. So make sure, class, that the definition that you will be providing or giving is free or grammar-free errors. Okay, it must be ungrammatical or no other error must be seen. Number 2, words defined has 3 parts or follow the usual pattern. So it must have 3 parts: the term, the class, and the distinguishing characteristics of the term being defined. And the last one, of course, for another 10 points, definition of words is accurate or correct, informative, and meaningful. Meaning, it must be a formal definition. A total of 30 points. So good luck. Kindly use your paper and write legibly, because it will be checked by me. I will not be giving you the answer because it is a subjective type, meaning there is no specific answer. So it depends on how you're going to answer it. Okay, thank you for that activity. Thank you also for minding me. Okay, so as for the last one, for our exit survey for this lesson, I am encouraging you, as for your assignment, to answer our exit survey form. So again, as part of your assignment, question 1, please do this tonight in your English notebook or in any piece of paper that, of course, you want to use. Question 1, what did you realize after the lesson? Number 2, in what activity or situation of your life do you want to apply your learnings today about observing correct grammar in making definitions? And last but not the least, what is the most essential learning did you gain from the lesson or topic? So that's all for today. Thank you for being with me from the beginning up to the end. By the way, don't forget the reference that I used. Okay, it is flashed on the screen. Don't forget, guys, that if you want to know more about this lesson, you can have this reference. Again, referencing, don't forget, is one way for us to avoid plagiarism, because plagiarism, don't forget, is a crime. That's all for today. Once again, thank you and God bless to all of you.